Again, I go back to the concept of consensus reality. Don't ever just accept anything on its face. First of all, let me say this publicly, I have no respect for the skeptic society, period. Because I don't like religion, period. I'm interested in truth. And anyone who gets paid, financially gets paid to be a skeptic doesn't impress me. People who call themselves scientists and they're doctors, they have PhDs, that doesn't impress me either. All of Hitler's top Nazis were all doctors, PhDs. Dr. Mengele, who murdered children. So I'm not impressed with doctors. I'm not impressed with government. I'm not impressed with mankind. I'm impressed with the foundations, the ancient foundations of the human family and where we're going as a species on this earth.
Är det så att kunskap är någonting som automatiskt frälser människan från hennes ondska så att vi i stort sett inte behöver Jesus? Nej. Jag kan bevisa det för dig. Jaha, hur då? Ja, det är oerhört enkelt. Jag kan bara ta ett par exempel. Om vi säger dig namnet Josef Mengele, det är någonting. Doktor Josef Mengele. Han var läkare i Auschwitz, det berömda koncentrationslägret. Hans specialitet var experiment på tvillingar. Och det var liksom inte vilka experiment som helst, utan normalt så dog barnen. När han satt och tittade på och antecknade deras dödskamp. När han sprutade in olika saker i dem och sådär. Alltså för mig är det är helt ofattbart alltså hur en människa kan göra någonting sånt. Det är som att han var från ett annat universum för mig. Så lite gemensamt känner man med en sån människa. Men i varje fall, han var ju också lite stolt över sin vetenskaplighet. Så problemet var kanske för honom och för också de som förnekar förintelsen att han publicerade sina anteckningar. Inte i de erkända tidningarna, men de finns kvar alltså. Därför så känner man till. Och en del tvillingar överlevde också i slutet. Han flydde och hamnade väl i, om det var Argentina, jagades naturligtvis av israelerna under många år, så han levde nog inget roligt liv. Och sen drunknade han faktiskt, så han är ju död nu, då vet man. Men han var medicinedoktor och han var dessutom filosofiedoktor. Han hade alltså dubbel doktorsexamen. Det är ganska ovanligt. Det är alltså en mycket hög kompetens. Gjorde det honom till en bättre människa? Svar nej. När man beslutade om judeutrotningen på Wannsee, som är en förort till Berlin, i början så skickade man bara judarna österut, för man hade inte bestämt sig för vad man skulle göra med dem. Man hade ju planer först att bara bli av med dem, men då vet ni ju säkert, det är många av er, att det var inget land som ville ta emot dem. Det är därför landet Israel är så viktigt. För hade det funnits ett land dit judarna hade kunnat åka, så hade faktiskt väldigt många kunnat överleva. Men inget land ville ta emot dem, inte Sverige heller. Kanadas premiärminister sa på en konferens om det här: kommer det en enda jude till Kanada så är det en jude för mycket. Så man skickade dem då österut till koncentrationsläger, och sedan beslöt man, för mig att det var 1940 det här, under den här konferensen, vad man skulle göra med dem, nämligen att man skulle likvidera dem, utplåna dem, döda dem alltså. Och det var 11 stycken höga nazister närvarande på den här konferensen. Och jag tror det var 8 stycken av dem var filosofiedoktorer eller jurisdoktorer, juridik då va. Och om det var 3 stycken var dubbeldoktorer dessutom, hade disputerat i flera ämnen. Behövs det något mer bevis för att kunskap inte gör att en människa blir god?
Now, you and I have talked for years now, John, and we know about the Bohemian Grove, we know about Skull and Bones, we know about a lot of these organizations, the Illuminati, the Bilderbergers, and what they're doing. And if you just look at the movie Eyes Wide Shut with Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman, you can get a feel for some of these societies and some of the bizarre things they do and the rituals that they do. What got you to somehow tie involvement with the paranormal, their involvement, and the things they're doing. I mean, something must have happened for a light to go off in your head to go, I think they're involved in this too. What happened?
It all started one night.
A long time
ago when I was giving a lecture at a bookstore in Santa Monica, California, during the height of the so-called health freedom movement in the early 1990s.
Mm-hmm.
And a guy who was sitting in the front row, who later became a good friend of mine, said to me, "What can you tell us about the involvement of I.G. Farben in all of this?" And I said, "I.G. who?" And he kind of smirked at me and he said, "You better check this out." Well, of course, I.G. Farben was the infamous Nazi chemical cartel, pharmaceutical cartel that had put Hitler into power, basically, who carried on unbelievable medical experiments, who literally built Auschwitz, the octopus cartel of cartels at the time, at the outbreak of the Second World War. They had incredibly close business relationships, or they actually controlled the majority of pharmaceutical and chemical companies of any size all over the world. And so when I began to research them and the drugs and their descendants, so to speak, in the pharmaceutical empire, I began to see the connection between the dampening down of consciousness and certainly a whole range of psychiatric drugs. So that was where I started, and the next thing that I came across was I began interviewing people who had been put away into mental institutions and given these drugs, and what had happened to them and how they got put in the institutions in the first place. And one day I sat down with a woman and talked to her, and she eventually spilled her guts to me, and she said, "You know, the thing that was wrong with me, so to speak, when I was 13 years old, is that I was able to read people's thoughts. That's what was wrong with me, according to my parents, who said that the devil was influencing me and that I would go to hell." And she continued to use her psychic abilities as a kid, and eventually it became such a serious situation in her family, because it wasn't a very nice family, and she knew what they were thinking, what they were planning to do, when they were going to beat her, when they were going to lock her up in a room, and all of this. And she said to me, "You may not believe this, but if I had been able to find one person, a therapist, a friend, a minister, somebody that I could tell my secret to, what I could do, who believed me," she said, "I never would have gone off the rails in the first place. My behavior would never have looked abnormal to anyone, and I never would have ended up being shut away in a mental institution and taking all these drugs." And I said, "Well, do you still have this ability?" And she said, "Well, I'm slowly getting it back because I stopped taking the drugs 5 years ago, but it's a long haul." And that's when a light bulb clicked in my mind. I thought to myself, wow, here is the most infamous pharmaceutical cartel in the world, I.G. Farben. The whole goal of the Nazi Empire is slavery, mind control over the population. Their descendants down through time have evolved into the most powerful pharmaceutical companies in the world. They make the psychiatric drugs. Here's a woman who was directly impacted by this, and yet all that was, quote, wrong with her was completely right with her. She had these abilities as a child, and she said to me, "I can introduce you to more people like this if you're interested." I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "Well, I can introduce you to other people who have these abilities, who got locked away in the same institution as I was locked in." I said, and she said, "Yeah, that's what I'm trying to tell you. If you go into insane asylums all over the world, you're going to find a certain interesting percentage of people, probably higher than you're going to find in the general population, who, when they were growing up, had these abilities, psychic, telepathy, ESP. They could influence matter with their mind. They could move objects across tables, and eventually they were diagnosed as mentally ill and treated with these drugs. And
Stay with us, John. We'll be back in a moment. Unbelievable.